HOA cops pulled me over, but I'm State Highway Patrol. You ever have someone try to arrest you in your own neighborhood? Because I have. And the twist, they weren't real cops, but I was. Let me back up. The day I moved into Millstone Glen, I was off duty, no uniform, no badge, just a long overdue vacation and a U-Haul full of furniture my sister swore she'd help unload, then bailed last minute. Millstone looked peaceful from the outside. Gated entrance, fresh-cut lawns, welcome signs carved in faux stone pillars. It even had one of those cute community watch boards near the entrance, with plastic lettering that said, "Remember to smile. We're all neighbors here." It didn't take long for me to realize the sign was lying. I'm Ryan Ellis, 36, divorced, career state trooper with 17 years on the Colorado Highway Patrol. I've worked every kind of traffic stop from backwoods meth labs to high-speed pursuits down I-70. I've been shot at, screamed at, and once tackled a guy wearing nothing but a raccoon tail. So, when I moved into this HOA-controlled neighborhood, I thought I'd seen it all. I hadn't. It started with a parking warning. Day 2, a slip of paper under my windshield. Typed in all caps, vehicle improperly aligned with curb. Repeated violations may result in sanctions. Millstone Glen Compliance Division. I laughed. My Charger, the same gray state-issued model I drove on patrol, was parked in my driveway. Not crooked, not blocking anyone, not on public property. Just there. I figured it was some overzealous clipboard carrier. Probably mistook me for a renter or didn't like the government plates. So I ignored it. Big mistake. The second warning came 2 days later, then a third, this time taped to my garage with masking tape so thick it peeled the paint when I removed it. The kicker, there was no official HOA email or phone number on the notices, just a P.O. box and a website that redirected to a broken link. Something smelled off. I didn't say anything until that Sunday. I'd just come back from a quick supply run when I saw 2 men standing on my curb. Khaki pants, dark blue polos, and windbreakers that said HOA Community Safety on the back in cheap vinyl lettering. One of them, tall, buzz-cut, chewing a toothpick, flagged me down as I parked. "You can't keep that car here," he barked. "Why?" I asked, calmly stepping out. "No commercial vehicles allowed overnight in driveways." I raised an eyebrow. "That's not a commercial vehicle. It's a government patrol unit." He squinted at my plates. "Doesn't matter. It's disruptive. Neighborhood ordinance." I tried to keep my voice level. "Is that ordinance filed with the county?" He hesitated. So I followed up. "Are you guys certified law enforcement?" Toothpick didn't answer. The shorter one with sunglasses shoved a clipboard toward me. "Sign this acknowledgement form. Next violation's a citation." I didn't move. Instead, I reached into my glove box, pulled out my badge, and held it in front of them. Ryan Ellis, Colorado State Highway Patrol. And now I'm asking you a question. What legal authority do you have to issue citations? Both froze. The tall one recovered fast, trying to puff his chest. "We're authorized by the Millstone Glen HOA Safety Division." "That's not a legal department." He stepped forward. "You need to comply, sir." And that's when I saw it, the look. The one I'd seen on too many bullies in uniform. He wasn't enforcing anything. He was asserting control. I raised my voice just enough for the houses nearby to hear. "You are impersonating law enforcement. Back away from my vehicle." He slammed his hand on my hood. I stepped between them and my patrol car. Then the garage door behind me opened, and I remembered what was in the back seat. SWAT. Earlier that morning, I'd agreed to temporarily hold a SWAT officer's kit in my garage while they were doing low-profile training up in the mountains. One of the team, a friend named Taylor, had hitched a ride with me back into town and was still sitting in the back of my Charger. Quiet, helmet off, just watching. The second the man slapped my hood, Taylor opened the door. 6'2", tactical vest, and every inch of him screaming real authority. Buzzcut choked on his words. "Sir," Taylor said, stepping out slow, "I'd recommend you take your hand off the trooper's vehicle and explain yourself. Carefully, The neighborhood went silent. A kid across the street dropped their basketball. The HOA guys stammered something about community defense protocols and neighborhood compliance sovereignty, which was nonsense, but dangerously convincing to people who don't know better. I recorded it all. That night, the video blew up. Fake HOA cops confront state trooper, get surprise from backseat, 5.6 million views in 12 hours. Suddenly, my inbox flooded. Former residents of Millstone, victims of the HOA safety division, folks who'd been fined, threatened, even followed home by guys in windbreakers. One man said they broke into his backyard to measure his fence line. A woman claimed they towed her car from her own driveway, then charged her $800 to get it back. No one could find a real HOA charter. No one could trace the funding, but everyone pointed to the same name, Karen Benedict, president of the Millstone Glen Property Excellence Board, never elected, never seen in public, but her signature appeared on every letter, every fine, every threat. I made a decision that night. I was done playing defense. It was time to find out who Karen really was and what the hell this fake HOA was hiding. Karen Benedict didn't have a LinkedIn, a Facebook, or a traceable phone number, but her name was everywhere, on the fake citations, on the notices, on a banner inside the Millstone Glen Community Operations Center, which was really just an old rec room converted into a pseudo-military headquarters with fake authority printed all over the walls. I walked in the next morning, plain clothes, body cam on, clipboard in hand. Nobody questioned me. They thought I was one of them. Inside, a whiteboard displayed the weekly compliance targets, fence height inspections, unauthorized garden decorations, suspicious vehicle patrols. My car's plate was up there, circled in red. That's how deep this delusion ran. They'd built an entire infrastructure around pretending to be real. Uniforms, forms, meeting minutes, even training seminars run by a guy named Steve, who once got fired from private security for using a taser on a mailman. I snapped pictures, sent them straight to Deputy Lynn, my contact back at the State Patrol office. Her reply came quick. None of this is legal, and we're not the first to report it. Turns out Millstone Glen had a history. The original HOA dissolved 7 years ago after embezzlement charges against the board. But instead of shutting down, a new group quietly took its place, unregistered, unofficial, and dangerously persuasive. Led by Karen. Only problem, nobody had seen her in months. I talked to my neighbor, Matt, a retired postal inspector who lived 2 doors down and kept binoculars on his porch for birdwatching, though he always seemed to know what time the HOA thugs walked the block. Karen, he said, sipping iced tea. She lives in that brick house on the East End. Big rose bushes, black SUV with no plates. Never leaves during the day. Sends her goons to do everything. I asked if he'd ever met her. Once, he said. She tried to fine me for having my American flag too low. Told her to get off my porch or I'd report her for mail fraud. I liked Matt. That night, I drove past the brick house slow. Just as Matt said, black SUV, covered plates, curtains drawn. The kind of house that felt staged, like it existed only for show. No Halloween decorations, no signs of kids or pets. Just pristine silence and the eerie calm of a spider's web before the catch. I kept driving, and that's when the tale started. A silver sedan, no plates, headlights off, 4 houses back. They weren't subtle. I led them 3 blocks, turned into a cul-de-sac, and parked. They crept by. I got a clear shot of the driver. Buzz cut, toothpick still in his mouth. Darren. So now I knew they weren't just issuing citations. They were watching. The next day, I filed an official complaint with the state attorney's office, attached everything, the videos, the fake citations, the footage from inside their operations center. Lynn texted me 2 hours later. Got it. We're opening an investigation. Stay visible, they'll back off if they know you're reporting upward. But they didn't back off. They escalated. At 2:13, someone threw a brick through my window. Not the living room, not the garage, my bedroom. Glass exploded across the nightstand. A shard sliced through the sleeve of my t-shirt. I hit the deck out of instinct, heart pounding, body still wired from years of reacting to ambushes. Outside, tires screeched. I scrambled up, bleeding, and ran out barefoot, saw the taillights of a silver sedan peeling down the street. Not just intimidation anymore. This was personal. I gave Lynn the plate number, and she traced it to a shell company, MG Residential Enforcement LLC, run by someone named L. Benedict, Karen's daughter. It all clicked. This wasn't about safety. This wasn't even about fake rules. This was a business model weaponizing fear to control property, push out resistance, and charge non-compliant owners into selling or paying up. The more I looked, the deeper it went. Over 30 families had moved out in the last 2 years. All filed anonymous complaints with the state after their departure, many citing harassment, threats, or unexplainable fines. Karen wasn't a president, she was a predator, and I wasn't just her latest problem. I was the one who could end her. So I set a trap. That Friday, I parked my patrol vehicle across the entrance to Millstone Glen, lights off, hood open, hazard lights blinking like I was having car trouble. I wore jeans, hoodie, no badge showing. 20 minutes later, they showed up. Darren and his new partner, some guy who looked like a rent-a-cop from a strip mall in 1997. They pulled up fast, jumped out, started waving their arms. You can't block the entrance. This is community property, vehicle subject to tow, under HOA code. 21B, I let them rant. Let them pull out their clipboards and start writing. Then I pressed a button on my key fob. The dash lights of my Charger lit up State Patrol flashing across the screen. Then the radio inside crackled. Unit 23 status check. I stepped aside. Let them see the dash cam, the badge, the evidence logging everything they were doing. Gentlemen, I said, calmly, you've just attempted to issue a fraudulent citation to an on-duty state trooper? They froze. Smile. I added, you're already on record. Darren tried to run, didn't make it. The moment he hit the sidewalk, Lynn pulled up in an unmarked cruiser and blocked him in. It was over. Almost. Darren didn't last long under pressure. By the time Lynn had him in cuffs and reading Miranda, he was already blurting excuses. She said we were authorized. I thought it was real. Karen has county friends. We were told to issue citations if we wanted to keep our housing discounts. Housing discounts. Turns out, that was part of the scam too. Karen had offered rent reductions and security stipends to younger men struggling with work if they agreed to wear windbreakers and act like cops. They were paid in power and scraps. I handed Lynn everything I had: footage, interviews, a list of residents willing to testify. She promised it was going straight to the DA, but I wasn't done, because Karen was still hiding, and the community was still scared. I gathered the neighbors that weekend in the park, not the HOA hall, but the grass lot they'd once labeled a non-sanctioned green space. I brought folding chairs, coffee, and 3 printed stacks of every known citation, fine, and compliance warning ever issued by the fake HOA. Matt, my binocular-wielding neighbor, helped pass them out. Mrs. Guyen, 2 doors down, was shaking as she looked through her stack. They fined me $500 for my wind chimes, said it disturbed the property harmony rating. A single dad on the back row raised his hand. They broke into my shed, said they were doing a fire risk inspection. Another whispered, they threatened to evict my mom. She doesn't even speak English. She cried for days. All of it built on forged authority and fear. I told them what Lynn had told me. Karen's daughter, Lila Benedict, was the legal name behind the shell companies tied to the Millstone Glen enforcement arm, and Karen herself had funneled over $300,000 through those LLCs using fake community fees. Not a single penny went to road repair or landscaping, but a lot of it had paid for Karen's spa weekends, a brand new Lexus, and a vacation home in Sedona. The room turned electric with rage. That night, someone spray-painted Fraud Queen across the Millstone Glen sign. The next morning, the HOA's phony compliance center was mysteriously emptied, chairs gone, Computers wiped, walls stripped. Karen had ghosted again. But she made one mistake. She left her printer, and in its tray, a draft letter titled Property Consolidation Proposal Final Phase. It laid out the whole plan. She had been preparing to push out the last 10 non-compliant residents, seize control of their lots through bogus liens, and sell the entire gated neighborhood to a developer based out of Las Vegas. It was never about community. It was about flipping the land and cashing out. I took the draft to the sheriff's department myself. The DA's office called me the next day. "You just cracked open a full-scale fraud ring," the investigator said. "We're going after RICO charges. Racketeering, organized impersonation of government authority. She's not looking at HOA fines anymore. She's looking at prison time, but still no Karen. Until Thursday. It was raining. Hard. I was sitting on my porch, drink in hand, watching the neighborhood lights flicker under the storm. That's when Matt texted black SUV just pulled into the brick house. Curtains moved. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my badge, threw on a jacket, and walked straight up her lawn. The roses were overgrown now, thorny and angry. The porch lights were off, but a soft glow spilled through a slat in the blinds. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Then I called Lynn. "I've got visual on Karen Benedict. Brick house. She's inside." "Don't engage," she said. "Wait for backup." Too late. The door opened. Karen stood there, robe on, glass of red wine in her hand like we were neighbors meeting over a fence. "Officer Ellis," she said, her voice soft and condescending. "I was wondering when you'd come." "You've got 5 minutes," I said, "before a warrant hits that mailbox." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I haven't broken any laws," she said. "The community wanted leadership. I gave it to them. You faked authority. You impersonated law enforcement. You scammed hundreds of thousands of dollars. They were scared. I gave them structure. You gave them chaos." That was her final defense. Not innocence control. That's all she'd ever wanted. And that's exactly what she lost. The next morning, Lynn and 2 federal agents arrested her in that same doorway. Karen didn't fight, didn't scream. She just sighed, like someone who finally saw the storm had rolled in for good. Karen didn't say a word as they put her in cuffs. No cries of injustice, no threats, just a single long stare, like she was still trying to will the world to obey her. But the spell had broken. When the federal agents led her down the front steps, half the block was watching, some in robes, some in work boots, all silent. And in that stillness, I saw what fear had looked like and what freedom was finally becoming. The next 2 weeks were chaos. The press caught wind of the arrest almost instantly. Fake HOA Queenpin. Arrested in Colorado, suburb state trooper exposed. Widespread scam, Karen Benedict faces. RICO charges after impersonating law enforcement in gated community. They spun it every way imaginable, from flower fines to felony counts. The suburban tyrant who built a police force with khakis and clipboards. The state trooper who pulled the plug on power-tripping fraud. But I wasn't reading headlines. I was reading impact statements. We held a community assembly in the park, the first real one Millstone Glen had ever had without the shadow of HOA compliance looming overhead. People cried. People shouted. People healed. Mrs. Guyen read a letter she'd written about how she almost sold her home after being fined 10 times in 6 months for things like mailbox color and the tone of her front porch lighting. Another man, a veteran named Ray, admitted he'd been too embarrassed to fight back when Karen's team told him his service dog violated decorum codes. A teenager, Mateo, stood up and said, "They told me I couldn't ride my skateboard past 6 p.m. Now I realize they were just scared of a brown kid rolling by their roses." That hit hard. Lynn and I worked together with the state attorney's office to distribute Karen's seized files. We matched every fake fine to every victim, created a public reimbursement system. Over $3,000 was ordered returned to residents, not enough to erase the fear, but enough to start justice. Karen's court date arrived with national attention. She wore a gray blazer, not orange, not shackled. Her lawyers had argued for leniency, citing her age, stress, misunderstood intentions, and community leadership under duress. But the prosecutors came prepared. They had recordings. They had internal documents. They had Darren, who pled guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence and read aloud Karen's private emails, including one that said, "They'll follow the rules if we look like the law. They're sheep. We just have to bark louder." That sealed it. The judge didn't blink. Sentence 18 years federal, no parole until 12. Restitution, public service statement, full forfeiture of assets. She was taken away in silence. Some people say justice isn't enough. Maybe they're right. Maybe no amount of sentencing can fix the trauma of being followed home, of being told your flowers are unauthorized, of being treated like a tenant on land you own. But you know what does help taking the power back. After the trial, we disbanded every trace of the fake HOA structure. Matt volunteered to lead a real neighborhood committee, not for fines, just for info sharing and events. Mrs. Sanchez planted a community garden. Mateo built a skate ramp with donated wood and spray painted across it in big bold letters. No Karen zone. It made the front page of the local paper. I stayed another 6 months in Millstone Glen before moving on. Not because I didn't love it, I did, but because there's always another neighborhood where silence grows too loud. And sometimes it takes someone in uniform to knock the noise out of it. Before I left, Matt gave me a gift, a framed photo of my patrol car with HOA safety goons standing beside it looking confused, just seconds before they realized who I was. At the bottom, he'd written thanks for reminding us who really protects us. 2 days before I moved out of Millstone Glen, I went for one last patrol, not as an officer, but as a neighbor. I drove slow, windows down, radio off, the same streets where I'd been followed, watched, threatened, now lined with chalk art and garden flags. Kids waved as I passed. Someone had set up a lemonade stand with a handwritten sign, "No permits required." I smiled so hard it hurt. The old brick house Karen once ruled from sat empty. The roses had withered, the lawn overgrown. For sale sign out front, though, word around town was, no one wanted it. Too much history, they said, or maybe too many ghosts. Matt hosted a send-off barbecue in his backyard. Everyone came, even some folks who'd stayed quiet during the height of the HOA drama. Turns out fear has a long tail, but freedom travels faster once it gets going. Mrs. Guyen made egg rolls. Ray brought ribs. Mateo showed up with a fresh deck and asked me to sign it. And Lynn. She brought a cake with icing that said, "To the only cop we actually trusted." I laughed until I nearly dropped it. We sat around the fire pit that night, sharing memories like old war buddies. Tom talked about the first time Karen fined him for birdbath algae. Sasha, a single mom, remembered when they threatened to seize her porch furniture during her 3rd trimester. And I told the story of the truck door slam that started it all. When I got to the part about the SWAT officer stepping out of the back seat, the entire circle burst into cheers. "Man," Mateo said, "you should have seen Darren's face." That's when he knew the jig was up. After everyone left, Lynn and I stood under the stars, looking out over the neighborhood. "You think they'll stay safe now?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah, because they stopped waiting for someone else to fix it. They fixed it themselves." She paused. "You ever think about running for something, sheriff, state rep?" I shook my head. "I do better in the field." She grinned. "You always did like kicking down doors more than sitting behind one." When I turned in my house keys, I left one thing behind, a laminated letter, taped to the old HOA clubhouse door. "To the residents of Millstone Glen. You were never sheep. You just needed to remember you had teeth. No badge or title can take your power unless you hand it over. Don't. Not ever again. Stay loud. Stay kind. Stay free. Trooper Ryan Ellis." I moved back toward the mountains. Took a new assignment up near Vale, helping train recruits on how to deal with rural enforcement and small-town politics. They listen more now. Maybe because I've got the stories, or maybe because they've seen what happens when the wrong people fake the right power. Whatever the reason, I'm not done, because HOAs like Millstone Glen, they're everywhere. And every one of them thinks they're untouchable until someone knocks on their door with the real badge. Have you ever faced fake authority in your neighborhood, your job, or your life? What should real power look like in a community? Drop your story, your thoughts, or your outrage below. Let's talk about justice, the abuse of fear, and what it really means to stand your ground.